Who falls in a spike pit? Hello, adventurers! I am the Welsh DM, the one Welshman whose accent fell down a spike pit while exploring a dungeon. As we continue on our quest to become okay GMs, it's worth spending a little bit of time thinking about what exploration looks like on our journey. Exploration is the often forgotten about pillar of D&D and other similar TTRPGs. And when the common opinion online is that D&D doesn't really support its own exploration pillar, why should we as okay GMs try to figure it out at all? Beyond the fact that it's used in other systems actually pretty well. Well, ironically, I actually think it's the most important, most interesting, most fun pillars of a well-built TTRPG system. Without it, we wouldn't have any reason to fight monsters, any way to talk to NPCs, or really have any interesting storyline to explore. Exploration is the method by which our players understand the world they're playing in. And as GMs, it can be quite daunting due to this almost ethereal background nature of the pillar. But trust me, it's well worth it and actually easier than you think. Honestly, players do it of their own accord without really thinking about it, and there are plenty of tips and tricks to make it easier for you to prepare and run as well in an interesting and dynamic way. So, without further ado, let's delve into the dungeon and learn how to run exploration as okay GMs. So the biggest issue I see online with exploration is people don't actually seem to understand what exploration is in their games. Exploration basically is the method by which players learn about the world and the story. It is the method by which they gain insights, learn critical information, and discover mysteries about the world and narrative you are telling. One of the common misconceptions is that exploration is just travel in games like D&D. And while travel does fall under that pillar, it is not the whole pillar. Ultimately, exploration is the connective tissue which binds our adventure together. It is the canvas that we are painting the story upon. Personally, I think exploration is actually the most important pillar of D&D and by extension other TTRPGs as well. It allows us as GMs to build rich worlds and it allows our players to discover them. It's more than just moving through a dungeon 5 feet at a time. Instead, it's more about the act of finding a secret phrase in a book on the first floor of the dungeon that opens up the secret cubby hole in the wizard's study on floor 2, in which you find the answer to the riddle that the Sphinx had back in the town previously. It's more than simply trekking through the uncharted wilderness. Instead, it's discovering the monsters that call that wilderness home and maybe discovering long-forgotten ruins and the power contained within. It is connecting our various hooks together and finding a way to make the world feel lived in. Personally, the challenge that I found with exploration is getting the players to actively engage in it. Players will naturally fall into exploration in a passive way, absorbing information that you as the GM put out there either through NPC dialogue or through other actions of the campaign. But what we want, even as okay GMs, is to encourage our players to dig a little deeper and find what's hiding beneath the surface of the world. And then it's our privilege as GMs to hide treasures that are worth digging up. The best moment is when the players have that oh my god realization moment as that final piece of information they've just discovered through exploration connects all the dots and the villain's plan is laid bare. That is what exploration is about. As with all things as GMs, it's worth doing some preparation. So how do we prepare for exploration? Straight up, it can be daunting, especially as a less experienced GM, because of the broad scope that exploration can take. So it is worth narrowing your focus and staying connected to the story that the players are currently exploring, rather than trying to cover every facet of the world. And remember, even if your players are doing a simple dungeon crawl, there is still a story to uncover, such as who lives in the dungeon now or why was it built. Every adventure has a little bit of narrative that you can connect onto when establishing your exploration. What we want to do is seed things around the environment that is there for the players to uncover. And so at this point, it's worth considering two other elements. What do you as the GM want the players to find out? And what are the players actively trying to find out for themselves? They sound like similar things, but they are slightly different. You as the GM have this wealth of knowledge that you want to get into the hands of the players to further the plot and guide their actions. but your players are looking for specific objects and clues based on previous information they already know. Subtly different, but worth remembering. Both of these have value, but it will be much easier for you to get the information you know across when you connect it to the things the players already know and are already looking for. Players tend to enjoy looking for a physical object, so if you connect the story and the lore to the magical trinket or the orb that the wizard holds, they're more likely to go for it. If you can do storytelling through the objects of the room or the things their characters physically can hold and discover, you're probably going to get them to buy into exploration a little more. Ultimately, because of the nature of exploration, we're always trying to use it to encourage further exploration. And the best way to do that is to give them something for conducting it. If you give them a physical object after doing exploration, they'll be encouraged to do it more in the future because they'll get more trinkets. Players are really quite simple. Now, it's also worth considering when you're prepping your exploration what kind of characters you have in the party and how different characters and different players will interact with that pillar. Different types of characters in your group will end up exploring the environment in different ways, and it is worth preparing that such that it rewards those different types of characters. Include different information that's discovered in different ways for different players. You'll be surprised at the payoff and the warm glow your players get when they realise their wizard's intelligence and knowledge of the arcana helped them solve the riddle. And ultimately, if all of this information points in the same direction anyway, you won't feel cheated when only the ranger actually succeeds at their thing, rather than everyone. Now, the single greatest advice I've read on exploration across the TTRPG sphere is from Sly Flourish's Lazy DM. In that book, he details the concept of secrets for your session prep. Essentially seeding mysteries, things to discover in the environments that your players are going to go into. These secrets can range from throwaway information about the locals to plot-shifting realities that might shape the future of your game. The point is to have a list of these things that you can pick up and throw out in front of your players whenever you need it. It's a really simple thing to do during your session prep, and I find it really fun as well because you can get a little wild and wacky with it provided you're comfortable with the world that you're running, because you know what's out there and you can know the kind of fun things that you can drop in to surprise your players. And trust me, you'll thank yourself in the moment when the players ask more about the bartender and find out one of them's a werewolf. Something I like to do with these secrets is to seed future plot threads in a long-form campaign. It makes everything I'm writing with longer arcs feel much more connected and a more lived-in world, like things are happening around the players even when they're not noticing it. And it's fun when they see the connections down the line. Regardless, preparing in this way means you're not beholden to geography when it comes to handing out information to the players. Regardless of which building they go into in town or which NPC they talk to, you have the ability to move this information around and just put it to where the players' own noses are leading them. Players have a tendency to go in odd directions and go against your preconceived notions of how the adventure will play out. So the more you can do to make yourself flexible, the better, to be honest. It's much easier to go with the flow of the party and put the secrets where they need to be rather than where they should have been. And lastly, with preparation, as with all three pillars of TTRPGs, it's always worth just going back to the rulebook and checking to see if there are any mechanical systems that can support exploration when you're preparing. D&D and Pathfinder love their traps, harkening back to their dungeon crawling days, and traps can be a great way to add a sudden spike of excitement and danger to your exploration moments. When it comes to exploration, I love environmental challenges like a wide gorge or a rushing river or a tall rocky cliff that the players have to circumnavigate or overcome. None of these have an obvious solution or mechanical way to overcome them, instead forcing the players to think creatively and dive into the world around them. Ultimately, I think exploration can be a great way to present challenges to players without it being the spiked, stressful moments that combat are, encouraging them to be creative and to buy into the reality of the world in a lower pressure environment. So just see what mechanical opportunities the system you're running has for the exploration pillar and see where you can fit them into your adventure. Honestly, one of the easiest way to become an OK GM is let the system do the hard work for you. We've mapped out our route and surveyed the mountain from a distance. It's now time to get on the trail and run exploration at the table. The number one piece of advice for OK GMs out there is to use the slower pacing of exploration to your advantage. With exploration being at a slower pace, it is much easier for you to bounce off your players, take the ideas they come up with, and add them to the world. You may have had an initial plan as to how this exploration was going to go out, but your players went in a different direction. That's fine, adapt to them and build the world around their own actions. To be honest, this is where Sly Flourish's secret list concept comes in really useful. Just because the players have gone in a different direction doesn't mean the information isn't over there anyway. It's sort of like the quantum ogre effect, except with lore and knowledge of the world rather than a giant half-giant holding a club. Ultimately, with exploration, the point is we're handing players information for them to make decisions with. And we can't predict what those decisions are going to be, we can only be prepared for the possibility of where they might head. And what we want is for those decisions the players make to lead to new discoveries. Ultimately, exploration is almost a self-serving or a Boros type engine within the TTRPG. Players make a discovery, head in a direction based on that discovery where they learn additional secrets which head them in another direction, and so on it goes, occasionally interspersed with moments of social interaction where they talk to NPCs or combat where they fight monsters, but exploration is the main game loop for the adventure. Similar to working with your players, work with the dice as well. Failures shouldn't stop exploration. Instead, failures introduce an element of danger to exploration, or perhaps mislead the players, leading them on a goose chase or giving them incorrect information that they really need to know. We're not punishing the intent of the players, just the behaviour of the dice. For example, a low roll while exploring a dusty old library causes the wizard to come across an evil book that seeks to corrupt the wizard with promises of forbidden knowledge within its pages. Or out in the wilderness, a low roll sees you stumbling down a steep hill, tumbling and crashing through the trees until you land in an owlbear nest. The remains of previous meals promise some potential loot, but you don't know when the monster is going to return. The act of exploration isn't what we're punishing, just the dice roll. They have gained knowledge, they've moved the story forward, but it's put them in a more dangerous situation. This is where I think Daggerheart with its hope-fear mechanic is really beneficial for establishing this advancement of plot in different directions. The other crucial bit of advice when it comes to running exploration is do not put critical information behind a skill check. If information is going to be crucial to the advancement of your plot, and you put it behind a locked door, you'll be surprised how often that information does not see the light of day. Instead, have this information be a reward for simply engaging with the pillar, regardless of the degree of success. Where the degree of success comes in determines how they gained that information and whether anything dangerous happened because of it. The role could dictate how long it takes to learn that information, whether there is a trap attached to that information, or any other dangers and challenges besides. Ultimately, you don't want your story to be blocked because of misfortunate dice rolls. And then there are a few other things that have helped me achieve mediocrity in my GMing. Flavor text matters. There's a reason there are boxes in pre-written adventures for you to read as a GM. You could consider pre-writing your own during your preparation, but a list of bullet points that you kind of riff off will do just fine. It's important to remember that we as GMs are the eyes and ears of our players. If we don't describe something to them, they're not going to be able to interact with it. And we can use these descriptions to nudge them in certain directions. Emphasize important things, either by putting them up front in your description when everyone is still focusing on you, or at the end of the description in a big climatic way. These are the 2 points when you're talking that players will actually latch on to information. And also remember to keep your descriptions short so people don't get bored and clock out. And the last thing that I mentioned in the previous selection is be supportive of your players' creativity. Because exploration does happen at a slower rate, giving people more time to think, you can support creative and innovative solutions a lot easier. I usually don't plan solutions to environmental challenges. I simply put a bit of terrain or obstacle in front of my players and wait for them to come up with something. It's up to them to figure out how the supplies they have, the class features, and the terrain around them can all be combined to overcome the obstacle. And a sneaky tip is don't let the first idea succeed. Let them try it and have it fail. It'll force them to come up with a more creative, wackier solution the second time around. And ultimately, we love it when stupid ideas work. As with every pillar and every game, the whole point is to be having fun. Be open to solutions and get excited about the ideas that your players are excited about. Be freed up to move information to places that they're going anyway. They didn't know where the information was in the first place, so when it is in the location that they go to, they feel like they made the right choice and they feel clever for piecing together all of the secrets. Ultimately, players are just rats in a maze. Provided there's cheese at the end, they think they did a good job. They don't need to know that you moved the maze around them. Now, I do just want to take a moment to touch on travel due to how many people tend to think that travel is exploration. Travel can fall under the exploration pillar, but it is not the entirety of the exploration pillar, and it also tends to include elements of social and combat as well. But since we're here, we might as well discuss travel, how to make it useful, not boring, and an enjoyable experience. There are a handful of methods for conducting travel in TTRPGs. Many people say don't even bother with it, just skip to the next interesting element of the adventure. After all, adventures tend to be about the things that happen at the end of travel, so let's just get to the action. Systems like Blades in the Dark even include this in the rulebook. They explicitly tell you to just skip straight to the next scene rather than detailing how you get there. Movies do it all the time, so why shouldn't we? But if you do want to enjoy the wilderness and have your players experience the wonderful world you as a GM have built, I personally recommend the montage method. You're able to highlight particular locations that they pass by or interesting people that they pass on their travels, but the minutiae of the day-to-day is kind of hand-waved and left into the background. It allows you to cover large distances in a really short amount of time, but leaving the door open for character moments that your players might want to have. Just remember to give your players the opportunity to explore the ruined wizard tower that you put on the hill overlooking the road. Personally, my methods vary from group to group. With Unrolled Stories, I run a version of the montage method with random events that occur on the road that are just there to inspire moments of character interaction. But with my home game, where we run more episodic one-shot style campaigns, I don't really want to waste time getting to the places, so we just jump straight to the mine that they're about to delve into. Ultimately, it's up to you and your table as to what method you find fun. The thing I want to instill in you as OK GMs is exploration is not just travel. So if you're going to have travel, use it as an opportunity to have the players learn about the world and explore a little bit. And there we have it, a tutorial on running OK exploration for TTRPGs. If you take nothing else away from this video, I hope you take away that exploration is the fabric which binds our adventures together, and its importance shouldn't be overlooked. Without exploration, our players don't learn about the villain's evil plot, and nor do they uncover his super special secret weakness to defeat him. And exploration is how you as the GM get to show off the beautiful world you've created that your players are wandering through. So make sure they stop and smell the roses, because you made this world and they better damn well appreciate it. Anyway, I would love to hear any other tips and tricks you have for running fun and engaging exploration at your table, mainly because I want to steal them for my game. And let me know if you had any wild or wacky solutions your players came up with to overcome a trap or get around an obstacle. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like. It will help it explore the untamed wilderness that is the algorithm. And if you enjoyed this sort of content, hit subscribe and press the bell notification icon as well to make sure you never miss a video. But I think that does it for exploration. I hope you now feel prepared to brave the unknown and hopefully find something okay hidden in the dungeon. I don't have anything else to add for now, so until we do this again, you keep an eye out for dragons. I'm going to go see whether I can get my accent out of that spike pit, and remember to keep telling stories. I like to wonder who puts traps in their own home. Like, why would you put that in a dungeon? But the amount of stuff I leave around my stairwell. They might just be doing it by accident. It's raining now, and I'm slightly worried the mic's picking it up. Don't continue. Please stop. I love whales. We're great for plants. Oh, maybe I should do a video on plants.